So in today's video, we're going to be talking about how to delegate, how to take your busy schedule, all the things that are going on in your business and your life, and actually be able to get some help, be able to attract people that you can hand things over to and have them successfully completed.
Yeah, if you've tried delegation in the past and you think like it's just impossible to do successfully, or if you haven't done it because you think you need that control and nobody's going to be able to do it like you do, we have the answers here. We have exactly what you need to change your mindset on that.
Now, my name is Mike Schmidt.
I'm AJ Rivera.
And Agency Coach is all about helping agency owners create more time and financial freedom through personal and professional development.
Because the truth is, if you own your agency, you own your life, guys.
All right, so let's jump into the training right now. Let's talk about how you can delegate, how you can create a more effective agency that isn't all on your shoulders, even if you feel right now that it's impossible to accomplish. So a question that AJ and I get all the time is all about delegation. Like, how do I get help? I'm busy. I've got a ton of projects. I have so much going on. And if I could just clone myself or get someone else just to take over some of these things, how do I do that? But how do I do that in a way that I can actually trust this person to actually do it the right way?
Yeah, this is something that's super tough for people to navigate. A lot of times because they feel like they want to have control over things, but more often it's because they try to do it and for some reason they can't get the result that they're looking for.
Are you somebody who maybe hasn't delegated simply because you're worried about handing over something? You've done all the hard work. You brought on that client. You built the relationship. You know exactly what needs to be done and by when and how that's going to work. And what's the reality of you actually being able to hand that to somebody else in a way that they understand that they're going to care as much as you do and not mess something up that you've worked so hard to build?
I've managed a ton of people in life, and I know it's always risky, right? To have that feeling, knowing that people are going to need to make mistakes. People aren't going to do things exactly the same way that you would do them. But if you want to ever get help with things in your life, with your workload, you're going to need to learn the skill and be able to hand those things off to people regardless of the risks involved.
Right. So, when I started my agency and I started first bringing on people to help, I had these same concerns and these same issues. Ultimately, I brought on someone to help with client management, help with all of the service delivery side of the business. And at first it was awesome. Like, this person came in full of energy, full of bandwidth to actually, take on some of the things I was handing off to her. And at first I felt just so amazed that I could actually do this. And I was starting to see kind of like, how life was going to be now that I had someone to focus on this side of the business with production, so I could actually go out there and sell and do the stuff that I knew that was most impactful for the business. But that's when I started to get these little taps, right? Like, occasionally I get an email from a client saying hey, I haven't heard about this thing or that. And so I'd kind of, hop into the, project coordinator's office and be like, hey, what's going on with this? And I would just kind of help, play catch up and kind of bring her attention into where things needed to happen. Not a big deal, right? Well, that started to kind of amplify and happen more frequently. And I said, hey, listen, what's going on? Why aren't you keeping up on these things? And she's like, I'm just super busy. I'm keeping track of a lot of different things. I'm sorry. Her intention was good, right? She wasn't in a situation where she was not capable. She was incredibly capable, but I could tell she was busy. And I was just kind of scratching my head. I was like, okay, she's busy. She's kind of stressed out. And I was doing all the things she was doing. And I thought I was doing it well. And I was also doing the other side of the business and sales and marketing and accounting and all these other bits of the business. And so it just was kind of frustrating for me to see that. It really all came to a head when I got an email from one of our awesome clients and someone that I'd worked with a long time and really appreciated. And it was an email letting me know that they had decided to stop working with us. And they specifically named this person that they'd had a lot of issues with, and that was working for me. And that not only were they ceasing work with us, they were also asking for half their money back on a project we had already started and quite honestly had made some good progress on. And so I was furious. I had already seen the taps, I already seen the signs, and I kind of knew what they were talking about. And in fact, we had these discussions about this client to try and head this off. And yet it was still coming back there with that. And so not only was this just a ruined reputation, in my opinion, it was also the money that they were paying us was what was paying for this person's job to be there. And so I was ready just to throw in the towel, say I'm just going to take everything back over. I was working with a business coach at the time that I reached out to, and I said, hey, here's what's going on. I was fully expecting him to say, yep, Mike, wash your hands of this situation, move on. You got the wrong person. And what he said to me was kind of a gut punch. He said, Mike, this is your fault. I said, what do you mean? Like this is this person's fault. I've been managing, I've been teaching, I've been training. And he said, Mike, you're not making it easy for this person to be successful. And what he helped me realize that day was that I was selling and I was expecting this person, this project coordinator, to take on what we now call snowflake projects.
A snowflake project is any project that is just a little bit different than the other ones, right? Like if you look at a snowflake and you zoom in on it with like a
Microscope. Or I guess a telescope could work too.
You can see that they're all different, but when you zoom out, like they're all the same, right? And so Mike's out there selling all these different projects, thinking that they're all the same, but when in actuality, each one was just a little bit different, right? And when you're trying to train somebody, when you're trying to get somebody to go through a process over and over again and apply a process, it's almost impossible when there's so many different variables.
Right. So like on a website, for example, like maybe this website is just a straight up 5-pager, like easy, right? This other one is that plus an e-commerce shop, right? Maybe another one's an e-commerce shop, but like it has some special shipping rules or conditions, right? Like everything is just a little bit different. On the surface, they all look the same, but really when you dive into it, there's all these specific things that are different. Where this was showing up for us with respect to the person that I had hired is like, I remember I was working with a prospective client. It was a plumber, and they asked me the question before they signed on the contract. Oh, this includes copywriting, right? Like you're going to write all the text that goes on the website, and kind of like a last minute like decision, I was like, yes. Which normally the answer to that's no. Like that was something at the time I was expecting clients to do. But because I felt like it was something that was going to potentially jeopardize the sale, I was like, well, we'll just include it. And I knew in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is for a plumber. Like how hard can the copy be? Like I can knock this out in a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour. I'll just bang it out. It'd be fine. And I'm getting the sale right now. Woo, that's awesome. Celebrate. Here's what happened though, is that when that client was handed off, I never told the project coordinator that they were getting copy. So when the client asked, hey, when are you guys going to write the copy? And the project coordinator's like, what do you mean us write the copy? We don't do that. We don't have anybody on staff that does that. You're responsible for that. Could you imagine how frustrated that client was in that moment? Of course, we were able to smooth things like that over, but these kind of things were building up and happening over and over and over again.
Right. And that's the thing. That's what creates all these different customer experience issues, right? Is because you have this all in your head. And when you're operating in a mode where not only are you responsible for the sale, but you're also responsible for the delivery, you can manage projects that way, right? Because you're going to remember all those different things. And I think that's the biggest mistake that business owners make when they start to try and delegate, is they don't realize how much stuff they're storing in their head, right? And once they start to realize that and look at why that's happening, they can take a look at what's making it so hard for somebody like her to be able to manage a project. She didn't have the ability to listen to those conversations, to hear all the promises that you're making, to see that like none of this stuff showing up on any type of form that was making it her way, right? Yet you're wondering why all these people are complaining and why she's just not getting it. And that's when you want to give up. That's when you're like, man, this isn't working. I don't know how to make this happen. But instead of doing that, what we realized is that we needed to change what we were doing, right? We needed to simplify our processes and simplify our offers so that things were happening on a more routine and predictable basis versus just whatever the customer made up.
Right. So that was like the big aha that came out of that scenario, is that I'm expecting someone to do work that's been, carefully crafted in my own mind and expecting them to be successful at that. And that was the first time that we were able to look at, okay, how can we create and simplify the services that we offer? How can we take all the complexities and build some recipes, some repeatable systems and processes? And that's ultimately what led us to be able to scale bigger, sell more projects, because it wasn't just about being able to hand things off. That's a big part of it. But it's also about creating clarity on the sales side for clients as well. And that's a big part of what we teach in our methodology inside of agency coaches, how to narrow that down. Instead of having to niche down into one particular type of business, how can you simplify all the projects that you're offering to your clients so that way they're easier to delegate, that they're more profitable, and that they have more of an opportunity to sell a higher number of them on the front end.
Yeah, absolutely. This didn't just fix stuff on our production side. It fixed stuff with sales, because even when we started to get good with production, Mike and I were the only ones that could sell for the company. Why? Because we were still going out there and using all this different fancy, strategy in order to try to seduce people into working with us, when really what we needed to do was simplify things on that side, right? Make it easy for every single one of our sales guys to walk into the same business and come up with the same results that we would have as well.
Yeah, so complex businesses are hard to scale. And left unchecked, a web or digital marketing agency will evolve into a very complex business. And so the choice is yours. If you want to allow it to, on its own, grow into a very complex business, it will be hard, near impossible to ever scale that kind of business, to ever extract yourself, to ever have a business that could potentially run without you. However, if you were able to simplify and really narrow in on the things that work the best and the things you can repeat over and over again, that's where the real magic is. So if you've got some value today around the idea of delegation, and maybe for the first time understand why you've hesitated to delegate or what's been in your way to do that, I hope you've seen a lot of insights there, and love to hear your thoughts on that.